We get to go?
Yes, we're
okay,
good to go.
I pressed the start button. Okay, we're actually going. You know what? I really dislike the word diet. It's already a tough word to digest, and it usually carries with it a lot of negative connotations. And sometimes, like the diet you are suffering through, where people, because they think of it as like the suffering, actually has to do more with trying to feel better internally than it actually is about losing weight. So with that being said, that's the topic today. Welcome to episode 12 of Living Your Life with Leanne Lang. This podcast brought to you by Extension Marketing, and for more information, please do check out extensionmarketing.com. Rachel Caven is joining us. Rachel Caven of the Caven Nutrition Group is our guest today. I'm so excited. This is going to be a fun chat.
I'm really excited to be here. It's fun because we've done so many segments together, and this is the first time we get to sit down and just talk.
I know, and we're going to talk a little bit beyond kale and broccoli and, and our healthy omega fats. We're going to kind of go into how this all evolved, especially to evolve for you. I've always known you, on the show, we talk about so many segments, which we're going to get to, but there's your own history behind being in this industry, having a passion for what you're doing and building your business.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's kind of interesting. So when I first got started, obviously I just wanted to help people. So I got a website done up. My slogan was Eat Great, Feel Better, which now means more to me than it did back then. Mm-hmm. At the time I was like, that just sounds great.
It's catchy.
That sounds nice, right? And a cute little logo with like the fork and the leaf and everything. And, I started seeing clients. I rented a space from a chiropractor's office and everything was going great. And then I got pregnant. Purposefully, completely planned. I was married. We had been married for 5 years, together for 8. And we planned this baby. And I had this little bit of dilemma inside me because my business was finally starting to take off. But then, when you're having a baby, obviously you're like, oh, my life is going to change. And obviously it's going to take up so much time.
Usually you kind of do one or the other.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't tend to do both at the same time.
No, you
wow.
don't. I don't recommend that if you're trying to build a business to have a baby right off the bat. So what happened, I took, obviously, a bit of time off with my son. And then when my son was 1 month old, my then husband had told me he had been cheating on me for over a year. So, and this is really personal. I've never told my story to anyone else before, so this is the first time for you, Leanne.
Rachel, I feel, it's funny, and I definitely wasn't expecting that. When we started this, but these are stories, these are life circumstances that happen to so many other people, and so when you hear it from somebody who you've seen on TV, dozens and dozens of times, who was always there smiling with this great information, you don't really know the story behind it. So here you are building a business, a brand new baby, with a husband, and had planned this life. So what happens at that moment? I mean, that's everything comes crashing down.
So I'll explain the details a bit more, but I just kind of want to fast forward to the whole point of telling my story is that it made me such a better practitioner. Because before I had my son and before I went through all of this, I was just like, what do you mean you don't have time to meal plan? Like, what's wrong with you? Like, just make your meals. And then after going through all of this, it's like, I get it, right? Like, I was trying to build my business, and I vividly remember at one point eating cold scrambled eggs off of my son's, high chair. And I was like, I understand all of my clients, no matter what they're going through. So it has made me, in a way, for survival, you have to look back at the negative and say, this has made me a better person. But I can honestly say that it really has made me so much more empathetic to everyone that comes into my office.
They must feel that, right? Because it's true. And I felt it recently when I was just like, well, just go for 45 minutes to the gym. Find the time to go. Your body needs it. And then I'm sitting here now with this different lifestyle, and I'm stuck at a computer, and I'm stuck at a desk, and then I'm already tired from sitting all day. And I remember making a post not long ago saying, I'm finding it harder now to get off from my body that hasn't been moving all day, to try to get it moving. And I understand what people have been telling me for years and years, how do you do it? Where do you find the time? I just don't have the energy. So when you live through having to practice what you preach to everyone else, it does make you found it made you better.
Absolutely. And that's the inertia, right? Like an object at rest always wants to stay at rest. So when you're sitting all day, you don't want to get into exercise. And you know how difficult it is to build a business because you're going through those steps right now, and all the like mental turmoil that comes with that. So I didn't have any mat leave because I was self-employed, right? So, so I had no income, and like my husband signed away sole custody. He just up and left, right? So here I was, like with a 1-month-old baby and no income and absolutely nothing, right? So I went back to work when my son was 5 months old, and I was going, at the time I had 2 locations. I was going from one office and then going to visit my lawyer because we was going through a divorce, obviously. And then I was still breastfeeding because I believe that that's the only like goal I had as a mom. I don't know anything about being a good mom, but I know nutritionally that breast milk is the most important thing. So I was keen to breastfeed him for a whole year. That was my goal. So I would go from the client meeting to my lawyer meeting, and then I would park my car in a parking lot, like in the middle of the winter, and go into the back seat and pump so that I could have the breast milk for him when I got back, because I was gone from him all day. And then go to my second location. And then also going to see my counselor.
Okay, I'm going to say, as you're sitting there with the breast milk coming out of those pumps, like, is the milk coming out and the tears coming out? And
everything's like, coming out.
I'm picturing you in this car, and I feel it for you, right? Like everything is just being drained, right? You've got the milk coming out, the tears coming out, and yet you had something in you that was like, I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to make this life work for me, for my son, and this business is going to grow. Like, you had to have that mentality.
Absolutely. So it was definitely like rock bottom. If that's the definition of rock bottom, was probably me in the backseat of the car pumping. But in a positive way, because I knew I was going somewhere. So I ended up doing a ton of therapy, and I highly recommend, like, when anyone needs any sort of counseling, I think it's the best thing. And I actually ended up going to see like 7 different therapists until I found my one girl who I absolutely love, and I refer everyone to her because she was just like, let's move forward from this. And she really, really helped me out. And then from there, she actually said to me, I vividly remember her words, because she was like, if you can be doing this well, going through what you're going through, you must be amazing with your clients.
Well, that's
and
a nice
she
comment.
was sending me 7 new clients a week. Like, in a way, she almost built my business. So I had people in front of me going through hell and back. Am I allowed to say that?
Yeah, absolutely. You can say We've already hit on a number of topics, Rachel. I think we're good. Yeah.
Okay, so just going through hell and back, right? Like, not eating at all, just living off caffeine, not drinking any water, not mentioning any names, Leanne. And people who weren't eating, or the opposite of the spectrum, they're eating their emotions. And people, their kids have cancer, or they're going through a crazy similar type of divorce situation, or they have abuse in their life. So many different factors. And it's not about diet. It's not about losing weight. It's about taking that person and kind of almost being their, I don't want to say best friend, because that's kind of crossing the line of client, but that actually happens a lot. And so many of my appointments, I would, make someone tea, and we would like cry on the couch together, which is not nutrition, but like I would say the nutrition's the easy part. Like, you need to eat your vegetables, you need your good fats, you need your proteins. But it's like, how do you take someone who's in that state and bring them to that level? And I remember, like, when I was building my business, thankfully my sister, bless her heart, she was my daycare, because we had babies at the same time. So she was staying at home with them. And I remember it was so great because I was able to, in the middle of the day, go home and just like pick up my son and like cry, and then like be like, okay, thanks, I gotta go back to work, and she's like totally fine. But then, so I would drop him off, I would cry the whole way to my office, I would stop at Starbucks, get an extra large coffee and a chocolate chip cookie, because that's where I was at the time, and then go and counsel people to not eat sugar, right?
I love your honest, like, this is so refreshing, Rachel, because, and you talk about that, and you talk about the people that, are going through these life crises, and, you're trying to be able to steer them on the right path, knowing at the exact same moment, at this point, it's what they're craving, these comfort foods, these things to just make them feel better. Well, you're equally going to get that coffee and chocolate chip muffin.
Absolutely.
Like, you get it. And so were you able to admit that to them also? Like, I get your battle. I get why this is so difficult.
Yeah, so it really depends on the person, because there is that professional line, and usually not like off the bat, like it's not my first thing, like listening. And if I felt like we had a good connection, or if they needed to hear that story, I would tell it to them. But I didn't tell very many of my clients, actually, maybe only like 20%. So it wasn't a big like factor, because it's about them, right? They're in my office for them, but only if they needed to get a bit of the motivation.
Right. But over the course of your career, and let's talk about this. I mean, Caven Nutrition Group you've grown this business. I mean, you've got people working under you, and it's amazing to see. But is that still usually the biggest factor coming in? Is that the way people treat food as a way to, as their own therapy? They're eating their emotions, or they're not eating because they're so stressed. Like that, essentially, the emotional side of our food intake is usually based on what's happening on in actual life.
Absolutely. And that's why I say all the time, and we do one-on-one appointments. Like we don't do like a group thing. We don't have like an online ebook or anything like that. It's one-on-one, because I feel like that's what works best for people. It's like I said, the nutrition part is easy, and you can Google any diet in the world. But if it doesn't work for your body, because everyone's different, that's a whole nother aspect, it's not going to work for you. But if it doesn't work for your lifestyle, do you know what I mean? Like you need to still love your life, and you need to love what you're eating. If you're eating a salad and you hate it, you're not going to get healthier. There is the emotional part. So I remember in school we had this one course about like the chakras and like the spirituality and everything. And at the time, so this was like 12 years ago, I'm like, okay, like I'm open to spirituality, but I was all science, like coming from a biomedical science background. I'm like science, right? So I have the science background, and through my experiences and through working with so many people, now I realize it's more the mental health aspect and the spirituality and them loving themselves. Especially with women, we're all brought up with the magazines and commercials and all this stuff that we're supposed to look like a supermodel. If you're not that like 120-pound 6-foot supermodel, then you don't have worth.
I know, but we grew up maybe having to see a magazine cover, right? We grew up maybe kind of getting the 17 magazine, and those girls look so pretty. Like it's everywhere now, and our kids, our generation, is looking at it every single time they open their phone. It's on their Instagram, it's on their Snapchat. There's 1,000 filters that make them look even better, or make them look, and then they shape things. Like it's become very unrealistic, I feel, what
absolutely
is out there
with the Photoshop as well. And you must really see this having daughters. So what they see, what they go through.
Yeah, I'm terrified.
Yeah. But even with my son, like he's turning 7 next week, but he just looking at the difference between boys and girls toys and books. With boys it's like science and build a computer, and girls it's like here's your hairstyles. And even though I don't have a girl, I really see the differences. Or the Disney movies where you need a prince. Anyways, we can get on a whole another rant on that, parenting and feminism.
We'll reel it back in. We'll reel it back in to the nutrition side. You just mentioned your son is now 7, so the company has really been in its growth stages. It's 7 years essentially that you've kind of been building it. How big is it now? Like how many individual nutritionists? Like who's working underneath the whole brand?
Okay, so I have a full-time employee, and I'm actually looking for another one right now. So if anyone's listening that's a nutritionist that wants to join, I have a sports nutritionist, Brittany, who is amazing, and she does anyone who's doing sports nutrition, athletes. And then I have Natasha, who's a prenatal nutritionist. So she's seeing people who are breastfeeding and who are trying to get pregnant and all of that stuff. So
can we hit on that? And I've seen this with so many girlfriends, the ones that are trying to get pregnant, right?
Yeah.
Is there a lot of changes that women are making now to enable that, through foods and through what their intake is, that it's making a difference?
Absolutely. So, and I'm not saying that nutrition is everything. It's not everything in any situation.
There's, as you mentioned, science behind a lot of that. Yeah.
There's biology. Yeah. There's so many other things. But we have so many people come into our office and they're like, I have hormone issues or whatever it is. And then you just look at their diet and it's not healthy. I'll just use those words. But their doctors don't give them any information. The doctor says the nutrition has nothing to do with it. Like, that's what people are hearing from the doctors all the time. Even if they get diagnosed with a digestive issue, IBS, like Crohn's colitis, you know, if you're not a diagnosed celiac, then they're like, diet has absolutely nothing to do with what you're feeling in your gut. You know, if you feel 5 months pregnant from the bloating, or with your mental health, they're just, and I'm not against doctors, they're absolutely amazing. They just don't have the time. It's the way the medical system is built. They don't have the time to listen to people as thoroughly and like look at their 7-day food diary. So they just have very basic recommendations.
It's interesting because I've had guests on this podcast, you know, talking about, you know, and it's just then they're given a medicine, right? Here, take this pill. And then unfortunately the pill is causing side effects, and then it's causing even worse gut deterioration. And we know that the health is really based out of the gut. And so when you kind of, let's try to rewind it, how much then are you looking at when they bring you a food diary to say, okay, all of this here is causing the inflammation here? And what is it like when you have that reaction from your clients who hopefully are honest enough with their logging, that you're able to start breaking down where the issues are?
Yeah, I feel like I have like a ninja power of being able to look at anyone's food diary and figuring out where their problem is. So I highly recommend, like, some people don't want to show what they're actually eating, and that's fair. It's, you know, it's like,
well, no, I'm
it's
sorry,
like anything,
if you're going
right?
in to see a nutritionist or a dietitian, why are you investing in meeting with them if you're not going to be fully honest?
It's true. It's a personal thing, though, right?
Okay.
They don't want to be judged, but really nothing is going to faze me ever. And the most help I can give someone is if they are super honest. And even my clients that I've had for years, sometimes they're lying on their food diary. And if they're like plateauing for a while and I really start hammering into their food diary and they're like, oh yeah, actually I've been having like vanilla sugar yogurt for the past couple of years. But saying that it was plain because that's what I wanted to hear, right?
Right.
So it's like in those like little simple tweaks that it was enough that it was affecting, you know, this person was like in their last like 10 pounds, right? So it was like we need to get really tweaky at that point. But it's so important for people to be completely honest. Like, a lot of people come in and they think I'm just going to give them a meal plan to follow without having to see what they're doing. But it doesn't work. Everyone has different schedules.
Okay. When someone asks for your food log, like, and you say, okay, well, I had a hamburger for dinner. Okay, are you saying what kind of a bun that hamburger was on and how much ketchup and mayo you put on that hamburger? Like, what actually goes into you figuring out where everything's coming from?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I don't need, like, they don't need to measure it. They don't have to bring a scale with them to the restaurant or anything like that, but a good idea of the different ingredients and, like, eyeing things out. Because another thing I want my clients to do is not be so obsessed. Like, get to a point where you don't have to keep a food diary. You just know you can eye out your portions. You know what works for your body. You know how to get back on track if you've gone off track. Because that's going to happen. A lot of people, when they fall off track, they think that they're failing at their nutrition program or their weight loss program, but that's just life. It's going to happen, and the key is just to know how to get back on track.
Okay. Can I ask you what your definition of diet is, or do you ever use that word? How do you explain that word? What's your take on it?
So from a science background, the definition of diet is actually just the way that you eat. A diet is just the way that you eat. But it's the weight loss industry that has made diet a 4-letter word. So a very negative thing. So a lot of people think that you go on a 12-week program, you do a shake program or like multi-level marketing that your friend's doing or something like that. You do the shakes for 12 weeks, you lose the weight, and then you go back to eating McDonald's and think that you're going to maintain that weight loss. So the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So you have to change your lifestyle. Sugar is more addicting than cocaine. They've proven it with rat studies. But the issue is that sugar is socially acceptable, right? Like if you bring cupcakes to work, you're a hero. If you bring cocaine to work, you're
getting arrested.
Yeah, probably, depending on where you work. So it's this socially acceptable thing, but also encouraged. Like if it's someone's birthday, you have to have their birthday cake. Or if it's Valentine's Day and your partner gets you chocolates, then it's a sign of love. And by turning that down, you're turning down the love. So there's a lot of emotional baggage with sugar and with junk foods. So...
let's bring up sugar.
Okay.
Because we're on it.
I like this topic.
Yeah, we're on it. And how people are taking information from this. We have done a number of segments based on sugar. My favorite thing that I have done with my kids, and it was something that we had done on a segment on the show, was the treat of having a Coke or a ginger ale, and them kind of knowing that it's a treat, but not really understanding why, until I honestly took a glass of water and put the water in front of them.
Yeah.
And then went and got a teaspoon and got a big thing of sugar. And then I just slowly started to count and had them count with me how many teaspoons of sugar I was putting into that 1 cup of water in front of them, for them to understand why I had issues sometimes with them having the pop. The visual cue of understanding how much sugar is in items has been helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. You've done it often.
Yeah, we've done that often on the show together. Mm-hmm. It's a really important thing, because the food industry, they don't accidentally put a ton of high fructose corn syrup in the Coke or in your different food products, right? It's a science. They know. It's called the Bliss Point.
This podcast is brought to you by Extension Marketing. They are a new breed of marketing agency that acts as your virtual marketing department, designing and implementing cost-effective marketing strategies that will grow your business. I can speak to this personally, as I've been using the Extension Marketing team to help me launch and grow my business. Founder Pat Whalen has been a lifesaver for me, a genuine coach, guiding me along the way into uncharted territory. Tell them you're a friend of the show and receive a free 1-hour consultation. Check them out at extensionmarketing.com.
So the Bliss Point is how much sugar is in a Coke, for example, that makes you addicted to the product but doesn't make you vomit. Because there is an amount of sugar, and probably people have, when you're a kid, you're at a birthday party and you reach that limit.
Yeah.
But there is an amount of sugar that would make you sick. So they have found this Bliss Point, which is the perfect amount of sugar that makes you addicted to it. So it's similar to alcohol. You have a couple of shots of tequila, you're feeling great, right? If you have more than that, then you're not feeling so good and you're getting sick. So people figure out their tolerance with alcohol, right?
So can you give me an example or other products? I mean, you take a Coke, for example, but what are companies doing? What are some foods that we would recognize that have their Bliss Points?
Yeah, so what we're programmed biologically to go for is sugar, salt, and fat, because those things in nature would be super high in nutrients. So the food industry takes those things, sugar, salt, and fat, and puts them together. So another great example is chips. Because
I love chips.
I do as well.
Chips and dip is that's my vice. Chips and dip. Okay.
Yeah. So it's the carbs from the potatoes, you got the fat from the oils, and then you have the salt. So the sugar, salt, and fat. And then they also add MSG, if it's a savory flavor like Doritos. Mm-hmm. They add the MSG, and in rat studies, when they're trying to do an obesity study, they need an obese group of rats, and rats aren't naturally obese. So all they do is give them MSG. That's the only thing, and the rats become obese, and then they have their obese group. So imagine that inside our food supply, this MSG that's making, and then combined with the sugar, salt, and fat, and how delicious Doritos taste, it's just a recipe for disaster. And you want more and more and more. And then also your body is not getting fiber, it's not getting any vitamins or minerals. So you're actually still craving food because your body wants those vitamins and minerals, but you're just eating these calorie void foods. So I say on my website, it says we're overfed but undernourished, because we're going for these foods. And then even I could go on forever about this, even our food that we have, a lot of people say oh, I'm eating lots of fruits and vegetables. Our fruit is really different now than it was 100 years ago. If you've ever been to a farm and they have that one apple tree, and you have an apple, it's so small, it's misshapen, it has a worm in it, it's really sour. And then compare that to a Costco Royal Gala apple.
Yeah, it's
which
shiny,
the size of your
pretty.
head. Yeah. And I say to people, if you don't find a Royal Gala apple really sweet, you're having too much sugar in your diet. Because that thing should be candy. Or if you find...
Okay, say that again.
So if you don't find an apple, a Royal Gala apple, really sweet, you have too much sugar in your diet.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. Because if you have a healthy whole foods diet, lower in sugar, you have an apple and it's really sweet. At some point it can almost be painfully sweet. It's just so sweet.
That would be so if you're having these apples and they taste really sweet, then you're doing well.
You're doing well. But if you have that apple and it's just an apple.
Just an apple.
It's not sweet to you, then you're probably having too much. Same thing if you like the taste of Diet Coke. Yeah. A lot of people are addicted.
I love the taste of Diet Coke.
Often
I cannot have a Coke, it has to be a Diet Coke.
Yeah?
Oh yeah. Okay. What's wrong with me? Oh my
God. Well, often when people are having Diet Coke, then it means they're having too much processed foods in their diet. Because again, if you're having a lot only whole foods, then a taste of Diet Coke is so chemically. So, and I know most of my clients are addicted to Diet Coke.
I am, but I crave it only with certain things. Like if I've had
a good day,
every day, I'm not having it every day. Okay. And I've now gone and gotten the mini ones. So we did that. I no longer buy the case, and then we buy just the 6 of the minis, and then I know that it's like a treat almost. Yeah. But I find that I only crave the Diet Coke when I'm having like the chips and dip or the deli sandwich or something. Like there's a certain food that goes with it. It's not like I want to have my salad and the Diet Coke.
Yeah.
You know, like I want the Diet Coke with the chips and dip or, the salami sandwich.
Because you can't,
they go together.
The salad tastes so good on its own because it's all the whole foods, but when you're adding something unnatural like the chips, then you want to have also that sugar.
Right, but then that's when I want my Diet Coke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But I know in that also is the aspartame. Yes. And so how much of an issue is that? Like I actually have like a sweet and low. I've tried to switch over to the Splenda and then to the, stevia, and that's been an adjustment. How much damage is that? I mean, we're learning about it, we understand, but can you kind of break that down, especially because that is the main ingredient in the Diet Coke?
Yeah, absolutely. So the aspartame is a neurotoxin, so it can cause migraines, headaches, high blood pressure. A lot of people don't feel any reaction, and I would say it's actually better to feel a reaction because you're going to avoid it, because it's probably harming you on like a really small level, so not enough that you're going to avoid it or that you can associate the two. But the other thing is there's lots of good options, like you said, the stevia, you could do the xylitol, there's like monk fruit.
Oh no, but I still like it when it's the sweet and low. Like, I've had to ease out of it, and I think people who are educated on this are trying to do the same thing. But what's some of the long-term effects if we're not able to get it out of our system or if we're constantly consuming it?
Yeah, so any neurological symptoms, since it is a neurotoxin. So if you're having migraines, depression, anxiety, all of those things.
As I have another sip of my coffee with the sweetener inside.
So there is an alternative, though. There is a company called Zevia, and they have a Diet Coke that is sweetened with stevia, but it also, like when you pour it in, you have to have it out of the can, because when you pour it into a cup, it's clear. Because they don't add the caramel coloring, which is another issue in the Coke. Like, it's not just the aspartame. It's like there's no nutrients in that Coke. There's a caramel coloring. They actually use it to clean blood off the highways after an accident. Like, it's very severe. Like, thankfully, your stomach lining is so strong that it can handle that amount of acid. But that could be another symptom, actually, if you're getting acid reflux. Often when people come into my office with any sort of acid reflux, I can fix it in a very short period of time.
Okay, someone comes in with an acid reflux. What are the questions you ask?
I just look at their food diary. Yeah. Usually, like, they're poor food combining. They're having tons of bread. They're having caffeine on an empty stomach is usually the thing. They wake up in the morning. They don't have breakfast. They just have a coffee. And, of course, you're having acid reflux because you're just acid on top of acid. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you had a lot of clients come in who thought that they might be a really complicated case, and then you're able to just look at it and say, make these small changes and you're going to be good?
Yes. So often the more complicated ones are the easier ones. It's the people that it's the people that have like the last 10 pounds to lose, because they think that, like, if you have 100 pounds to lose, like, just cut out Coke, cut out chips and some sweet stuff, and you're going to lose like probably 80 pounds, right? It's the last 10 pounds, the 10 to 20 pounds that's the most difficult, and actually when you have to be the most strict. So at that point, that's when you have to decide, am I still going to love my life if I'm going to, like, at the expense of, or to, in order to lose these last 10 pounds? Because you can always eat less, you can always exercise more, but do you love your life? Do you want to have wine on the weekend with your girlfriends or with your partner? Do you want to, like, not have to be so strict about everything? So that's another big thing I talk to my clients about, is the whole issue of weight on the scale. It means nothing. Like your BMI, as you know, as an athlete, it's, you have lots of muscle, you're going to have a higher BMI. So I have a lot of clients that have done personal training for a year, and then they come into my office a year later, they're like, I did personal training, I gained 20 pounds, exercise does not work. It's like, okay, back up. Like, it makes sense, though. When you're exercising, you're building muscle, which is causing you to gain weight. It's making you hungrier. So if you're addicted to sugar and chips, you're just going to eat more of those. And then you also have the justification in your head. Like, I went for a run today. I can eat a whole tub of ice cream. I deserve this. So if you're exercising, you actually want to feed your body better because your muscles are trying to repair themselves.
See, I thought you were going to say something different. Like, I thought you were going to say when people start to get into the exercise, they start to feel better, and then that domino effect leads into that they want to eat better because they're feeling so good. But you're saying not necessarily, that you do have people come in that are like, well, I've been working out like crazy, so I feel like I can reward myself with the food. So
I usually do the opposite. If someone comes in and they're not exercising, I don't recommend exercise for at least 2 weeks. Not that they can't, like if they really want to, some people are motivated, they want to do both things, that's great. I'm never going to say not exercise, but I wouldn't say like while you're getting your nutrition under control and cutting out things and changing your habits, let's just focus on this. And often, because usually if they're having a lot of junk food or a lot of bread and things and sugar, their blood sugar's all over the place, so they don't have the energy for exercise. So often after that 2-week period, they've changed their habits and they start feeling super energetic, and then they want to exercise.
That's interesting. Okay, so when you have people coming in first time, you say, let's just focus purely on the food. Like, I don't want you doing both at the same time.
Yeah.
You'll feel different anyway.
Yeah.
Based on the food.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's neat.
Because you need to get off those food addictions. Because with the exercise making you hungrier, you're just going to eat more.
How hard is it to get over some of those food addictions? Like, how often will you have a client that just, is banging their head against the wall, just like, I can't seem to give it up?
I've gotten hate mail before. And I'm okay with that. And because that's my job. My job is to take them from one point and move them to the next point. So I had a good friend once, like when I was telling him about my process, he said, okay, so you ruin lives for a living. And I'm like, maybe for a short period of time, but then I take them to a place that's so much better. And the amount of times I've been in my office and I've just said, trust me. And you'll see on the testimonials on my website, like, I remember Rachel just saying, just trust me. So, and like, that's my job. My job is to guide them, like to hold their hand through that period and say, trust me, and get them to a point where they're like, oh my goodness, I feel amazing. I'm not sleeping in the afternoon anymore. I'm not hungry. I don't need snacks. I'm loving the taste of salad or mushrooms or whatever their thing is they didn't like before, because they've changed. You can actually change your taste buds.
Okay, how is that happening? How are we changing our taste buds?
So going back to the Diet Coke and the sugar, salt, fat, you will actually crave, if you start eating whole foods, they don't taste very good at the beginning, but it's because we're used to all these unnaturally flavored foods like the Doritos and the Diet Coke. So when you start eating fruits and vegetables again, they don't taste good at the beginning, but then they start to taste really, really good. And then going back to these really highly sweetened, highly salted foods, they're, again, like I said, painfully sweet. Have you ever had a situation where you had like a dessert or something and it was painfully sweet? Like almost hurt?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I tend not to have a lot of desserts, so when I do, like it's overwhelming. And to be honest with you, I usually only want like 2 to 3 bites, and then I'm good.
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, I've had that fix, and I just don't need much more of it.
Exactly.
But it's funny because on the same end, I will think like this salad tastes like there's so many flavors to it. Yeah. And I'll hand it over to someone else and be like, you got to try this. And then for them, it's just like, eh.
Yeah.
And so I'm understanding now the palates are just different based on what they're used to consuming. Yeah. Like what their taste buds are used to.
Yeah, there's a book called The Dorito Effect, and it explains that. How our food actually doesn't taste as good as it used to because we're not buying it fresh. We're buying it from like California, and it's been on the truck for weeks. And they're like breeding tomatoes so that they last on the truck, not for nutrients and not for taste.
Kind of like those big massive strawberries we're getting.
Yes, like, that are white on the inside. I will only eat strawberries in June in Canada.
They taste so much different.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah. Okay, we're hitting on those. Another one of the segments that I've really liked, and this will probably apply to the people that you're working with. They think that they're making healthier choices. They think like they've committed to it. They've gone grocery shopping and are buying things that say organic, and they're buying things that say low fat. Like, let's hit on that, because you want to help the people who think that they're helping themselves and yet they're not seeing results, or they're kind of plateaued. What is happening? What are the mistakes that they're making?
Yeah, so this actually really breaks my heart, because people want to do well and they want to feed their families well. But again, the food industry has so much money for marketing. So, and I was actually in Costco the other day, and I see this family in front of me, and their cart is filled with what I think is junk food. It's like the cereals, like, sugary cereals, and like tons of bread, and, popcorn, a big bag of Smart food, and things that we think are healthy because they have the words Smart on it, or they have the words whole grain, and they have the words organic, vegan, gluten-free, whatever those things are. So the key is going back to the whole foods. So trying to cook from scratch, or at least buy stuff that's already made for you, but that's made like from Whole Foods, made from scratch.
But why are we getting caught when you're saying that there's whole grain or whole food or organic or smart on the packaging? What's wrong with those words, or what are those words not really saying?
Okay, so they're not lying, but it is just marketing. Anytime there's a food label on a product, it's just an opportunity for marketing. So they could say it's organic, but if it's organic cupcakes, that's common sense, right? Like, it's still a cupcake. Or gluten-free products. Like, I remember I used to work at the Natural Food Pantry, and they have a gluten-free bakery. And I remember this one lady who came in, and she was diagnosed with celiac, and then, 5 years later, she got type 2 diabetes. And she thought that, like, God was out to get her. But it's really, like, if you are taking away, she was taking away the gluten, obviously, but then just replacing it with processed gluten products. That's not the answer. Like, processed products are never the answer. So if it says vegan, that doesn't mean it's healthy. Do you know what I mean? Like, some vegans are eating, like, pasta and soy milk and no vegetables. Like, it's still, even though you're vegan, you can be organic, it still can be very unhealthy.
Okay, so you have to be aware.
Yes.
Try not to get tricked.
Yeah, the key is reading the ingredients. So don't look at the front of the label. Don't look at the nutrition facts even. Look at the ingredients. Can you pronounce everything? Is it real food? How many times is sugar labeled in there?
How many times can it be labeled in there? Like, how many different ways is it going to come across?
Yeah, exactly. There's 53 different names for sugar. So the food manufacturers, they tell you to look for the top 3 ingredients because they're listed by weight. But since they know that, then they don't put it in the top 3, but they put it in, like, the next 17.
So anything with is it?
Oats. Anything in oats. Sucrose, fructose, glucose. Or the natural sugars, like the maple syrup, the honey. I see this often. People are like, it's natural. But white sugar is also natural. Cocaine is also natural. Natural doesn't mean healthy.
Okay. But the oats, that's the...
Yes, anything with the oats.
That's where you're getting those sugars.
Yes.
And watch for the wording.
Yeah. And then another experiment is what you did with your Coke with the kids.
Yeah.
Take the amount, and I said this on my Facebook group the other day. Someone asked about about yogurt for their kids, and they wanted to decrease the amount of sugar in it. So I said, take your sugar and figure out how much sugar's in it and put less than that. And then the next day, like, a little bit less. Like, never let the food industry sweeten the food for you. It's okay to buy a coffee and add your own sugar. It's better to, like, add a pack or 2 of sugar than it is to buy a latte with, like, 60 grams of sugar. That's like 2 Cokes.
Okay. Can I go back to this? So the mother with the yogurt.
Yes.
Okay. So she was she giving her kids, like, a vanilla yogurt, like a flavored yogurt?
Yes.
Okay. So what you then had her do was take natural yogurt.
Yeah.
And add the sugar.
Yeah. Add the amount of sugar.
Add the amount of sugar that they're used to.
Yes.
And so it was no longer vanilla, but it was regular yogurt with sugar.
Yeah.
And then she's slowly she's starting to put less and less natural sugar, real sugar in that over time, so that the kids are weaning themselves off how much sugar was in their yogurt.
Yes.
Okay, that's a really good way of looking at it.
Yeah, so even if there is sugar in there, it's still less, and that's going to add up over time. Like 50% less sugar in their yogurt every day, that's going to be very helpful in the long run.
Can you do that with a lot of other things? Like, what other things can you do that with?
Well, your coffee is one of them.
Yeah.
So if people are having, a double or quadruple or something, then slowly cutting back on that. Or if you're getting, like, look at the nutrition facts at, Tim Hortons, Starbucks, wherever you get your coffee. See how much sugar is in your latte. And then measure it out. Like, how much sugar can you have in a coffee? Like, say, for example, 2 packs. It's going to be, like, less than a quarter, or maybe even 1/8 of the sugar. So really...
those are good tricks. Those are good things to start to be able to do. But I like that for a mom with the kids and the yogurt. Yeah.
And another example is the juice. Just start diluting the juice. Yes. And I do that with adults too, because adults are really just big kids.
But I actually did that.
Yeah.
And I think it's based on a lot of the segments we had done, which is how much sugar is in the juices. And so I started to kind of just dilute it with the water and slowly, And I also found too, because they like that fizziness, is I just add the soda water or the soda stream to whatever it is that they're having.
That's great.
And then they get the bubbles.
Yep.
Yeah. That's even kind of my way of being able to do things. Okay, let's get into something we'd mentioned off the top was the gut health, is that you had so many doctors kind of just prescribing the medicine when a lot of it can be fixed within your own gut and so much. What are some of the foods that you really stress with people or that you want them to be doing to try to be able to balance and get that healthier gut?
Yeah, so I love this question because I have so many clients that come into my office and they're like, I was diagnosed with IBS. It really means nothing. It means the doctors can't find a cause of your symptoms. You have digestive symptoms and they can't find a cause. So like, here's a label. You can go home happy with a label. With IBS, there's actually, it's like a 50% mental component and a 50% gut component usually. So with the gut health, it's cutting out things. Like I've gotten people off of their anxiety medication just by cleaning up their diet. And maybe that's cutting out the gluten, or again, cutting back the sugar, cutting back on the caffeine if they're having, going back to that really stressed anxiety person who's having like 3 venti Starbucks coffees a day. And then replenishing with the good bacteria. So we're so sterile now. Everything is, pasteurized, and we're all hand sanitizer. So we need to add that good bacteria. So you actually have more bacteria in your body than you have cells. So you're more of a bacteria than you are a human. And everyone is like that. So there's tons of research now that's coming out describing how important these bacteria are. They've actually done studies, again, on rats where they take an obese rat, they take that bacteria, like a stool sample, put it in a skinny rat, and then that skinny rat becomes obese. And then vice versa. So they take a stool sample from the skinny rat and give it to the obese rat, and the obese rat loses weight. That's the only difference, is the change in gut bacteria. So it's not only calories in, calories out. It's actually how much your bacteria decide that you absorb. So by cleaning up your gut, you can clean up your mood and also lose weight and be able to maintain that weight. Mm-hmm. Because I always tell people you can't go against your biology. Like if your blood sugar is low, you want to eat something because your body's trying to save your life. We're always so against our bodies, but every single cell in our body is trying to get us to survive every second of the day. Like our bodies don't know that there's a Tim Hortons and Starbucks around every single corner in the whole city of Ottawa. So from a survival standpoint, your blood sugar is low, they're like, get food right away, right? So we're always going against our biology, but if we just give our body the tools that it needs and replenish with the good bacteria, then you actually can lose weight and maintain it much easier.
Okay, how are people, if you can, because they're like, okay, like sign me up, right?
Sign me up.
Okay, so what are things that help? What should they be consuming to be able to clean up the gut? And, are there natural things that they could be taking? Are there probiotics? Like what would you recommend then for someone if you're saying, okay, we're going to clean up your gut?
Yeah, so if they have a severe digestive issue, I would recommend a probiotic supplement, just because you can't get that amount in any yogurt or anything. So we just really need to replenish, and they often will feel better almost immediately. But for maintenance, you can do yogurt, kefir. I really love the coconut kefir, because then you're getting...
What is that exactly? I haven't really caught on to the kefir thing.
So kefir is similar to yogurt. It's a fermented product, but it's more of a liquid.
Okay.
So it's something you would drink instead of eat with a spoon. So I really love the coconut kefir, because then you're getting away from the dairy, because often people have issue digesting dairy. You can do the kombucha. That's another one for your kids as well, because it has the fizziness. So it's a fermented tea. It's a really good option for people who want to get off Coke, or even to get off alcohol, because you could have a fizzy drink and it feels like you're having something special. The sauerkraut, kimchi, there's lots of good options when it comes to fermented foods. I believe that fermented foods should be an option in the food guide. You should have one serving every day of fermented foods just to replenish all that good bacteria.
Okay. I'm going to tell you this right now.
Okay.
You've just listed 6 items that I'm going, that does not seem that appealing.
Yeah.
Especially for the person that's having the chip dip Dorito and Diet Coke. Their taste buds are going to fight this. Like, I'm sorry, like, even for me that I'm like, I eat really healthy, like, some of those things just don't sound appealing.
Have you tried the kombucha?
I have. I've tried it with you.
Oh, you did? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember that was not a good batch, I think.
Like,
it was very vinegary.
Yeah, so it's almost like, how do you train them? Like, how do you kind of be able to do this? Because some of them, like, some fermented things that I love, right? So it's changing the palate. Like, I like things that are, like, dilled, like, or pickled, like, that kind of stuff, like beans and stuff. Like, I don't mind eating that.
Okay.
But, some of it, I'm thinking people are listening going, none of that sounded appealing.
Yeah.
Do you get that?
Absolutely. Okay. And if that's the case, take a supplement.
Okay.
You can get it in a powder form and just put it on top of whatever you're having your cereal. You can put it in your smoothie. If you don't like yogurt, then you could just do the kefir and take like 2 tablespoons of it a day.
Okay. You could do it in a shorter, like, it's not like you have to be full on consuming it. Like, I don't have yogurt because I found the yogurt didn't match, like, the dairy. I didn't like that part of it, right? So, So supplementation, sometimes throwing things into the food that you're already consuming, is a way to go about it.
Absolutely. So I'm always food first, but there's some situations like in Canada we should have vitamin D because most of the time it's like we have a freezing rainstorm and we're not out sunbathing.
Oh, my favorite vitamin D thing with you was to put the mushrooms by the window so that they're absorbing the sunlight, and they actually absorb the vitamin D.
Yeah.
And then you're having your mushrooms with the added bonus of the vitamin D. See, I remember everything that we talked about. That's amazing. That's a good way of doing that one, right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Or for the example of iron deficiency. If you're iron deficient, you feel terrible, and it can take years to bring that up just with food alone. So just taking a good quality iron supplement, not the one that you're that makes you like constipated and turns your stool black, like a really good quality one that's not going to constipate you, and you can bring your iron up in 2 months and you feel amazing. Like in that situation, like don't suffer through 2 years of iron deficiency. Buy this $30 supplement and fix it now, and then maintain with food.
How much emphasis needs to be put on the now? Like people are procrastinating. I'll take care of my health next month.
Yeah.
You know, I'll wait till the new year and have a resolution. You know, like how important is just the understanding of the now?
That's a loaded question because I feel like people have to be ready to change their diet. Because a lot of my clients, they feel amazing. They want all their whole family members to come to see me, and they often do, but you can't force someone. Like a lot of people want to bring in their husband, they want to bring in their child, but if that person doesn't want to change, you can't change them, right? Like they need to want to do it themselves.
Does there need to be a health crisis? Does there, like, unfortunately, as our medical system works, does there need to be something that's the trigger, the aha moment?
Sometimes there is. So usually that's not the best place. Like I'd say like the ideal time, or like the time that most people come in, they've been diagnosed with something, but they're not on medication yet. Like their doctor has given them 3 months, get your cholesterol under control, your blood pressure, and then we're gonna put you on medication if we haven't figured this out, because then they have a timeline. But a lot of people, like in my office, I do a lot of weight loss, so that's kind of an ongoing thing that people are constantly trying to accomplish. So it's not as like time dependent. But I think for your family members that you really want to get healthier, like don't push them. That's the worst thing you can do. And just leave out things. Like my son will be like, oh, I want to have ice cream. I'm like, okay, great. And then he's like playing a game or something, and I just put a plate of vegetables out or a plate of apple slices, and mindlessly he just starts eating them because they're in front of him, and he like forgets because he's 6 and has a small attention span. He forgets that he asked for something else. So same thing with your husband, right? Like just leave out things. People are more likely to eat it, so don't push it on them.
Or if it's just not there. If it's just not in the house.
Yeah, so if you are buying groceries for your family, do not buy those foods. They can go out and get them themselves. Like, never say they can't have them, but just don't. Your home has to be your safe place, especially if you're trying to get off the chips and dip and you want to make sure that Tony doesn't go and buy them and bring them in.
Well, it's funny because, like, that is the one thing that's like that's like the cheap food in the house is like a bag of chips and dip. Yeah. But I have the ability to have a couple of chips and put the bag away.
Yeah.
And Tony will say, if the bag is open, I'll eat it. Yeah. But if the bag isn't there, I'm fine. Or the bag could stay in the cupboard, and if it's not opened, he won't open it.
Oh, okay.
Right? So but as soon as it's been opened, and if I've had my 5 to 10, he's like, I'm done, Yeah. So it's understanding the psychology within the home too, right? And as you came back to it, right, it's so much of it is emotional. And until you understand that aspect, there's still work ahead. Yeah. So the accountability factor works really, really well. A lot of people think they're weak because they need the accountability of someone else to like look at their food diary. But I say like everyone needs accountability. It's like when you're on the highway and you're speeding and you see a cop and you slow down, right? Right. It's just the accountability of having the law, right? And in our society. So it's the same thing with everything, with your food. Having someone you have to be accountable to who wants the best for you, but also has like educated outside eyes that they can look at your life and look at your food diary and like tweak the pieces. There's so much more we could be going to, and I'm like, do I even look at the clock right now as we're approaching the 50-minute mark? Guys, we're just gonna have to have you back on here. Yeah, sure. We'll just have to have you back, and we'll kind of keep on going things. How can people? What's the best way people get in touch, or what questions? Just in closing, should they be asking themselves to say, okay, maybe I am at that I'm ready part? I think the biggest thing is people wanting to feel better. So a lot of people come into my office and they know that they're just not 100%.
So they go to their doctor, and the doctor's like, oh, maybe you have depression, maybe you need a medication. But they know that that's not them. But they just feel like they could be better. They're not as energetic. They're wanting to sleep. Like, they're not living their life. Like, it's okay to have one tired day if you get a bad night's sleep. But if that's every single day for you, eventually that becomes your life of just being fatigued and not giving your best to your job or to your family, to your partner, to your friends, and to yourself. Like, most people are just, especially women, we're running around taking care of everyone else, and we don't, give the time to ourselves. So put that, like, you are not helpful to other people unless you are taking the time yourself to feel better. And then what happens is that the families always do get better, because whoever's trying to get healthier is bringing in healthier things and bringing in, less unhealthy things. So
good questions to ask yourself. It's interesting because you speak with such passion and with such knowledge, and and I look back at the first 5 minutes of this podcast, and we're sitting with a girl in the back of a car breastfeeding a kid, trying to build a business, and their life is falling apart. People rebuild. People have the capacity to be really strong. You're an incredibly strong woman, and you've built this business that I think a lot of people are really benefiting from. So people can find more the Caven Nutrition Group. Best place to go. So what's the website?
It's cavennutrition.com. We also have an Instagram, which is Caven, so CAVEN_nutrition. And then we have a really great Facebook page. So just look up Caven Nutrition's group. And we're posting weekly challenges. We post recipes. I give away a free kitchen clean out and 7-day meal plan. So there's lots of interaction there, lots of support for everyone, and that's completely free.
Awesome. Rachel, it's always a pleasure. And also there's some great segments on my website that you had in there. A lot of the stuff that we had actually gone through, some of these topics are videos on my website as well. That is it. That's another episode of Living Your Life with Leanne Lang. Thanks for tuning in.